Botswana is seeking to secure funding partners for a $2.5 billion plant to produce synthetic fuels from coal, a plan rekindled by the energy crisis playing out in Europe. The Southern African nation has for nearly a decade discussed tapping its extensive coal resources to produce fuels to displace costly imports. But as the plan goes on, it is concerned about the sincerity of Europe and other foreign partners to look away from non-renewable energies like fossil fuel and focus on renewables as the world seeks to reduce carbon emissions. The battle is between ensuring a greener environment and growing the economy from abundant coal deposits, while Europe aggressively seeks ways to address its energy crisis. Joining me now to discuss this is Craig Morkel, Chair, Gas Economy Leadership Team, South African Oil and Gas Alliance. Thank you so much, Craig, for joining us on Business Edge.
Hello, Africa. How are you doing?
I want to believe we're doing fine. Let's get into it now. How rich is the coal deposit in Botswana, and what impact has it had on the country's economy before now?
Well, they certainly have excellent resources that they haven't been able to utilize effectively. Part of the challenge has been that Botswana has not been able to access the export and regional markets because of transport infrastructure not being developed well enough southward of Botswana. So it makes sense for them to consider liquids to deal with their own energy security requirements.
All right, so now that Botswana is hoping to secure $2.5 billion in funding for the plan from partners, now has anyone shown interest? And considering the estimates, what is the project worth?
Yeah, I don't have the details of the progress made in their discussions with investment partners, but clearly there is a growing trend that foreign investors have been shying away from coal for quite some time. However, this phenomena is a bit of hypocritical because those very investors are involved in the global north, in developed economies, supporting fuel extraction and utilization in their own countries. So we need to find a solution to the financing challenge that fossil fuels in Africa generally faces, including coal, oil and gas. And this has been the topic of discussion at last week's Africa Energy Week and 2 weeks before that at Africa Week. And the constant refrain from African business and government leaders has been that the global north needs to come to the party with funding because denying Africa the opportunity to utilize its natural endowment and utilizing its own is hypocrisy.
Well, you have mentioned the need to look at the issue of financing, funding the project. And we understand that it has been on for quite a long time. It's like a work in the pipeline for a few years now. So aside funding, are there other issues or some other impediments or factors affecting the coming aboard of these particular projects? And of course, what areas or how do you think it can be dealt with?
Well, I think the techno-economic issues are important to understand. And we've had Sasol in South Africa running coal to liquid and gas to liquid plants for decades already and successfully. The key challenge that gas to liquids and coal to liquid operations face is their environmental impact, right? The environmental issues are important, but we need to now decide whether energy security is more important than environmental sustainability. Certainly, there's a case to be made that the loss to the economy of not having adequate electricity in the form of load shedding of electricity or non-supply of fuels such as diesel, petrol, heavy fuel oil would make those economies unsustainable. And we're already facing a global recession. Inflation has impacted Southern Africa, including Botswana. One assumes that it wants to convert its coal endowment to liquid, not only for transport fuels, but for industrial operations, including mining, agriculture, and its tourism sector. It cannot rely on South Africa to export electricity reliably, although South Africa has been exporting electricity for some time to members of the South African power pool, including Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and elsewhere. Now, the challenge becomes, how do we overcome primarily the financing challenge here to secure energy supply within Botswana and the region? And if one looks at the minimum capacity of a viable...
Hello, Craig, can you hear us? All right, so we will try to reestablish connection with Craig even as we continue to look at the situation in Botswana. It's nice to know that we have our guest back online, that is Craig Morkel, and he has been telling us about what the project of the coal to liquid is worth for Botswana. Thank you so much, Craig, for staying with us. Now, I would like you to just conclude on those areas you feel that if Botswana can channel their focus and attention to, it could help mitigate the effects and, of course, combat the issues and challenges as regards the project.
Yeah, so I think the key thing is that Botswana, as a member of the SADC delegation to the African Union and the African Union delegation to COP27, needs to go there with a united voice in securing finance for not only Botswana's fossil fuel exploitation, coal, oil, and gas, but alongside the rest of African member states, go to COP27 and deal with the issue of this financing hypocrisy, where global north, the developed, are willing to support their fossil fuel industry, but are reluctant to do so in Africa. When the numbers do stack up, and it does make sense financially to invest in this project and earn a substantial rate of return for investors.
All right, now it has been speculated, thank you so much. Now, it has been speculated that the desperate demand for coal energy by Europe puts a major dent on the plan and the practicality of moving away from fossil fuel. Now, do you think that the world is actually ready to shift from non-renewable energies and focus on renewable energy, looking at the pressing demand that is at their front?
Sure. Every country needs an energy that is diverse. Through diversity, you get risk. And so it cannot rely, no country should rely on only fossil fuels or only renewables. There should be an energy mix that is diverse enough to include coal, oil, gas, solar PV, wind, biomass, biogas. It should also possibly include nuclear where it's feasible. And there's no reason Botswana should not exercise its right to secure its energy supply with its own resources. It should not be forced by the global north to import refined product or electricity in the region that is dependent on fuels and energy that is ultimately. There should be no reason why the sovereignty of Botswana should be undermined by what is becoming clear is a new form of colonialism.
All right, now Botswana is also planning to increase its energy mix to almost 40% by the year 2036. How realistic is this plan? And do you think, or do you believe that motions have been in place to actually achieve this plan?
No, sure. I think the solar resources in Botswana is in no doubt. The solar resources are there. It will need a strong grid to distribute and evacuate the power from its solar resources, from solar PV facilities. It certainly can export some of that to South Africa. There is a South African power pool in which surplus power from SADC member states can be traded with each other. So the opportunity is there to not only meet its own requirements, but meet the requirements of the region. Economies.
Now, Botswana's government is hoping to have these partners come on board. Are we looking at a split in terms of profit, or how do you think the revenue in terms of sharing will pan out?
Yeah, so where Botswana is talking about a private partnership, probably be an organ of state, Botswana as a shareholder. It might have a private sector partner that might want a majority shareholding in such a project company. And obviously the dividend would then flow to that private sector partner, and the rest is then a dividend to the state. These things can be held by private sector shareholders within Botswana and foreign partners, and therefore the dividend on their own should be an economic boost. But more importantly, it is the electrons on the grid and the gigajoules of energy in the economic system will determine the economic success or failure of Botswana's mining industry, its agricultural industry, and tourism industry. It's also developing quite a strong service sector, and therefore we should be very concerned about its lack of energy and to attract for its mining, agricultural, and tourism sectors in particular. They are embarking on a master planning exercise from the 1st of November, and it is assumed that all of the energy mixes in all of the energy pathways would be included in the energy mix, including feasibility of coal to electricity. How long that master planning process will take is uncertain, but it should not be taking more than 6 to 18 months. It can be done fairly quickly, and I'm sure that this exercise that will start on the 1st of November is not the first time that they've looked at marketing in such a comprehensive manner. That will determine its investment strategy, including the high-level feasibility of certain projects.
All right, before I let you go, Craig, it's quite nice to know that Botswana is making some appreciable efforts in developing the different sectors of its economy. Now, let's look at Africa on a wider scale, because we know that Europe is looking at aggressive ways by which it can develop and gain access to energy, most especially as it is looking at ending its energy crisis. Now, do you think that Africa is doing enough to tap into this possible lacuna to see how they can generate revenue from it? Of course, we are not we are not trying to say that what is happening in Europe is, of course, terrible, but then we are saying that is Africa doing what it needs to do in order to make economic gains looking at the crisis in Europe?
Sure. So it's a function of how long the energy crisis in Europe would last, right? And the energy crisis in Europe might outlast any conflict between Russia and Ukraine ending any soon. The challenge now is that the pipeline from Russia to Europe is no longer functional. First, it was by choice, and then clearly there's damage to the pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, from Russia to Europe, with claims that it had been sabotaged and others saying no, it's Russia's fault. Now, pipeline is not going to be restored soon. There will be a continued need for gas in Europe. North America, in particular the USA, is taking up that gap in supply to Europe. But North America's gas supply may be curtailed, own energy security, and not only for Europe's. And therefore, the gap is there for Africa to exploit its natural resources, first and foremost for its own energy security, to deal with energy exports and poverty itself, and then export surplus oil and food, where it can earn US dollars and utilize that revenue to then develop its other economic sectors, including renewables, for that matter.
All right, thank you so much, Craig, for joining us on the discussion. We hope that Africa will be able to take that initiative, and as Botswana is doing, to see how the economy can be improved in time. Nice to have you around. Now, Botswana, a largely arid country that is the world's second biggest producer of diamonds, plans to increase its energy mix to about 40% renewables by the year 2036. And with the hand of fellowship extended to private partners, it hopes that the projects can help blossom its economy. Of course, some people consider this as a very laudable project, beautiful initiative, but then how it would affect the economy and, of course, the climate change, carbon emission, is something that we get to talk about and look at some other time.